They had everything: wealth, success, and lives most people only dream of. Yet in their final moments, all of it meant nothing. What you're about to witness are the stories of the privileged few who traded caution for arrogance, ignored every warning, and paid the ultimate price for decisions so catastrophically stupid, they'll leave you speechless. It was July 22, 2016, when the incident occurred inside a converted warehouse loft in the Williamsburg section of Brooklyn, New York. The building had been repurposed from industrial use into private residential and studio spaces over a decade prior. The structure was 5 stories tall, constructed primarily of brick and steel beams. The freight elevator servicing the units was original to the building, installed sometime in the early 1970s. Dante Miller, 47, worked in private art acquisition, sourcing and managing collections for high-net-worth clients, including private collectors and family offices. His work involved handling 6- and 7-figure pieces, coordinating discrete sales, and overseeing storage across multiple secured locations in the city. He used his 4th-floor loft unit to house high-value inventory and conduct private appraisals away from public galleries. That day, he arrived with a companion who assisted him with cataloging and transport. The two had been moving crated items between floors using the freight elevator for most of the afternoon. Earlier in the week, the elevator had stalled twice between floors. Both times it resumed operation after several seconds of delay. Miller had mentioned the issue to building management but had not waited for a repair appointment. On the day of the incident, the elevator stalled again while descending. Rather than wait, Miller manually interfered with the elevator's safety systems by accessing a maintenance panel inside the car. This allowed the elevator to move without the automatic braking system engaged. His companion had exited on the 4th floor and was waiting for him to return. The elevator began its descent from the 4th floor. The car moved unevenly, jerking slightly as it passed the 3rd floor threshold. The guide rails, which kept the car aligned within the shaft, had corroded at their lower mounting brackets. The stress from the uneven movement caused the brackets to snap free. With the safety systems disabled and the car destabilized, it tilted and dropped suddenly. It fell roughly 1.5 stories, approximately 15 to 18 feet, before impacting the concrete floor of the elevator pit. Miller was standing near the center when the car dropped. He was briefly weightless as it fell. When the elevator slammed into the pit floor, the sudden deceleration drove the floor violently upward into his body. The impact compressed the elevator floor inward. Miller was thrown downward, his body absorbing the full deceleration force. His pelvis was fractured in multiple places. Several ribs on his left side were shattered and punctured his spleen and left lung. Internal bleeding began immediately. He exhibited brief agonal breathing and movement before rapidly losing consciousness. His companion heard the crash from the 4th floor and immediately descended the stairwell. Upon reaching the ground level, they found the elevator car wedged partially into the pit, its doors jammed shut. They called emergency services at approximately 3:47 p.m. Firefighters arrived within 9 minutes and used hydraulic tools to pry open the outer doors. Paramedics found Miller unresponsive with no detectable pulse. The elevator was powered down and secured. An inspection revealed that the guide rail brackets had been weakened by water infiltration from a roof leak unrepaired for more than 2 years. The safety interlock had been manually overridden. The report concluded that structural failure and disabled safety mechanisms led to the uncontrolled descent. Dante Miller was pronounced dead at the scene from traumatic injuries and internal hemorrhaging caused by blunt force trauma sustained during the fall. It was May 19, 2018, when the incident occurred at a hillside estate in the northern outskirts of Scottsdale, Arizona. The property sat on approximately 2 acres of sloped desert terrain with panoramic views of the surrounding valley. The estate featured a custom infinity pool built into the hillside, with a shallow tanning ledge along one side measuring 9 inches deep. The ledge extended roughly 8 feet in width and was designed for lounging. The deeper section of the pool reached a maximum depth of 5 feet. Ivy Gable, 34 years old, worked in the wellness industry as a patron and consultant for boutique fitness studios. Her role involved promoting lifestyle brands and hosting events for clients. She was known to be overconfident in social settings and dismissive of advice she considered overly cautious. That afternoon, she had invited a group of acquaintances to her home for a poolside gathering. Alcohol had been served steadily since early afternoon. By mid-afternoon, several guests were visibly intoxicated. Throughout the day, multiple people had commented on the shallow depth of the tanning ledge. One guest mentioned that it was not suitable for diving. Another pointed out the warning decal on the pool deck, which clearly indicated no diving. Ivy dismissed the concerns, insisting that she had used the pool countless times and knew its layout. She spent much of the afternoon moving between the ledge and the deeper section without issue. Shortly after 4 p.m., she climbed out of the pool and stood on the concrete edge adjacent to the tanning ledge. She announced her intention to dive back in. 2 guests verbally objected. One stepped toward her. She ignored them and positioned herself with her toes gripping the edge. She bent forward, extended her arms above her head, and pushed off with her legs. Her body arced forward and downward. The angle of entry was steep, aimed directly at the shallow ledge. Her hands entered the water first, followed immediately by her head. The crown of her skull struck the textured concrete bottom within a fraction of a second. The impact was direct and forceful. Her neck compressed violently as her momentum drove her head into the surface. The 5th and 6th cervical vertebrae fractured at the base of the skull. The medical examiner later determined that the injury resulted in a complete cervical spinal cord transection. Her body went limp. She remained face down in the water, arms floating loosely at her sides. Several guests noticed within seconds and began shouting. 2 people entered the pool and pulled her toward the edge. They lifted her onto the deck and turned her onto her back. Her eyes were open but unresponsive. No normal breathing was detected. One guest hesitated, then attempted chest compressions while another called emergency services at 4:12 p.m. Paramedics arrived approximately 11 minutes later. They found no pulse and no respiratory effort. Advanced life support measures were initiated. After sustained advanced life support efforts with no return of spontaneous circulation, she was pronounced dead at the scene. The pool area was secured and photographed by responding officers. An autopsy identified the cause of death as catastrophic cervical spine trauma, with associated spinal cord injury sustained during the dive. The medical examiner noted that the spinal injury caused immediate paralysis below the neck, eliminating any meaningful ability to move or protect her airway. Toxicology results indicated a blood alcohol concentration of 0.14%. The official report concluded that Ivy Gable died from diving into water insufficient in depth, compounded by alcohol consumption that impaired judgment. It was March 14, 2017, at a 32-story condominium along Miami Beach's eastern edge. On a warm, humid night with clear visibility, glass-paneled balconies overlooked the city lights below. Nora Briggs, 38 years old, worked as a consultant in the luxury design industry. Her job involved coordinating high-end residential projects for wealthy clients throughout the Miami metro area. She was known among her social circle as confident to the point of recklessness, often dismissing caution in favor of spectacle. That evening, she had invited a small group to her 24th floor unit for drinks and conversation. The balcony had been recently renovated, its original metal railing replaced with frameless tempered glass panels held by stainless steel bolts drilled into the concrete ledge. Several guests noticed early in the evening that the railing gave slightly when pressure was applied. One person mentioned it felt loose. Another suggested staying back from the edge. Nora waved off the concerns, insisting the installation had been completed just weeks prior and was perfectly safe. She spent much of the night near the railing, leaning against it while talking and gesturing toward the ocean view. Her dismissive attitude toward the warnings became more pronounced as the evening progressed. Around 11:40 p.m., she dragged a cushioned patio chair toward the edge of the balcony. She climbed onto the seat, raising herself roughly 18 inches higher than the floor level. Well above the height the railing was designed to resist lateral force. She held her phone out in front of her, attempting to capture a wide-angle shot of the skyline and waterfront. Several guests called out to her. One stepped forward. She laughed and leaned her torso over the top edge of the glass panel, pressing her weight forward to get a better angle. The anchor bolts gave way. The entire section of railing tilted outward and separated from the ledge. Nora pitched forward into open air. Her body fell more than 20 stories in a matter of seconds. Several floors below, she struck a fabric awning that extended over a lower terrace. The awning tore instantly on impact, offering no meaningful reduction in speed. She continued downward and hit the concrete pool deck surrounding the building's outdoor amenity area. Her head made contact first. The impact caused catastrophic head and neck injuries. She was later pronounced dead at the scene from blunt force trauma, according to emergency responders. A security officer stationed in the lobby heard the impact and radioed for help. Emergency medical personnel arrived within 6 minutes. They found her body near the shallow end of the pool. No resuscitation was attempted. The balcony above was cordoned off by building management. Guests on the 24th floor were interviewed briefly before being asked to leave. The gathering ended without further incident. An inspection later that week revealed that the bolts anchoring the glass panel had been installed into concrete that had not fully cured, significantly reducing their effective load-bearing capacity. The contractor had rushed the timeline to meet the unit owner's deadline. The building code required a minimum curing period of 28 days. Only 11 days had passed. The report concluded that the railing failed due to improper installation, but also noted that the collapse occurred only after significant forward force was applied well above the railing's intended load height. It was October 11, 2015, when the incident occurred on a private desert trail approximately 40 miles northeast of Barstow in the Mojave Desert, California. The terrain consisted of hard-packed sand interspersed with exposed rock shelves and scattered creosote brush. The afternoon temperature was 87 degrees Fahrenheit with clear skies and minimal wind. Visibility extended for miles across the flat basin. The trail had been used informally by off-road enthusiasts for years, with no official maintenance. Silas Clay, 51 years old, worked in venture finance, managing investment portfolios for private clients. He was known among his peers as competitive and dismissive of risk, often pushing limits in both professional and personal settings. That day, he had joined a group of 4 friends for high-speed off-road driving. The group had rented modified utility vehicles designed for desert terrain. Each vehicle was equipped with roll cages, but only 2 had full 5-point harnesses. Clay selected a vehicle with a standard lap belt and no shoulder restraint. He also removed his helmet shortly after the group began driving, stating that it obstructed his ability to film the experience. A guide accompanying the group had briefed them on trail conditions before departure. He specifically warned about loose rock shelves that protruded from the sand at irregular intervals, particularly in the northern section. He advised maintaining moderate speeds and staying within visual range of the lead vehicle. Clay disregarded the instructions. Within the first 20 minutes, he had accelerated past the group and was driving alone approximately a quarter mile ahead. His vehicle reached speeds estimated at 70 miles per hour based on tire tracks and impact analysis. The front left tire struck a jagged rock outcrop partially buried in the sand. The tire blew out instantly. The vehicle yawed sharply to the left and began to roll sideways. Clay was not secured by a shoulder harness. As the vehicle tilted, he was thrown toward the open side frame. His upper torso exited the vehicle during the first rotation. His back and shoulders struck the ground with significant force. A fraction of a second later, the rear frame of the rolling vehicle came down directly on his chest. The weight of the vehicle, estimated at approximately 2,500 to 3,000 pounds, compressed his rib cage. Multiple ribs on both sides were fractured inward. Both lungs collapsed immediately. His heart sustained severe compression and contusion between the sternum and spine. The vehicle completed 2 full rotations before coming to rest upside down, roughly 30 feet from the initial impact point. Clay's body was pinned partially beneath the rear axle. No movement was observed. The guide and other members reached the scene within 3 minutes. They found Clay unresponsive and not breathing. Emergency services were contacted at approximately 2:34 p.m. A medical helicopter arrived approximately 48 minutes later. Paramedics pronounced Clay dead at the scene. Recovery teams used a portable winch to lift the vehicle off his body. His body was transported by helicopter to a regional facility for autopsy. The autopsy report identified the cause of death as traumatic asphyxiation due to chest compression, with multiple rib fractures, bilateral pulmonary collapse, and cardiac contusion. The medical examiner noted that the absence of a full harness allowed for ejection during the rollover. Silas Clay was confirmed dead from traumatic asphyxiation caused by chest compression during the rollover. Investigators determined that excessive speed, failure to use proper safety restraints, and disregard for terrain warnings directly led to the crash. It was August 6, 2016, when the incident occurred at a private coastal airstrip in southern Monterey County, California. The facility consisted of a single paved runway measuring approximately 3,200 feet in length. That morning, temperatures had dropped to approximately 41 degrees Fahrenheit overnight due to coastal marine conditions. A thin layer of cold-soaked moisture coated exposed surfaces, including parked aircraft. The sun had not yet risen. Visibility was limited to runway lights and hangar floodlights. Heath Ledgerwood, 44 years old, owned a small aircraft and worked in commercial real estate development. His job involved managing property acquisitions along the Central California coast. He was known to colleagues as impatient and status-driven, often prioritizing appearance over procedural caution. He had owned his single-engine aircraft for approximately 2 years and held a private pilot license with just over 200 logged flight hours. That morning, he had arrived at the airstrip before dawn to film a takeoff video for social media. The plane had been stored in an unheated hangar overnight. When the hangar doors were opened, frost was visible on the wings and fuselage. A ground operator mentioned that the aircraft would require a warm-up cycle before flight. Ledgerwood dismissed the suggestion. He entered the cockpit and began the engine start sequence immediately. The engine turned over and idled roughly. Oil pressure readings were below the normal operating range. The ground operator gestured toward the instrument panel. Ledgerwood waved him off. He did not complete a pre-flight checklist. He did not inspect the wings for frost. He advanced the throttle and began taxiing toward the runway within minutes of engine start. He reached the runway threshold and turned onto the centerline without pausing. He applied full throttle. The aircraft accelerated down the runway. Near liftoff speed, the engine torque fluctuated. A brief loss of power caused the aircraft to yaw slightly to the left. Ledgerwood attempted to correct with rudder input, but the response was sluggish. The aircraft continued drifting left as it began to rotate. The left wing dropped lower than intended. It struck a runway edge light mounted on a short metal post. The impact was violent. The wing buckled inward. The aircraft pitched forward and slammed nose first into the compacted dirt adjacent to the runway. The cockpit structure collapsed inward. The control column was forced rearward. Ledgerwood's chest struck the control column with extreme force. Multiple ribs fractured. His sternum cracked vertically. The aorta ruptured at the point where it exits the heart. He sustained catastrophic injuries and was later pronounced dead at the scene. The ground operator witnessed the crash and immediately radioed emergency services at approximately 6:18 a.m. Local fire and rescue units arrived within 8 minutes. Paramedics found Ledgerwood unresponsive, still secured in his seat. No pulse was detected. The aircraft was secured, and the runway was closed temporarily. The airstrip resumed operations later that morning. An investigation by federal aviation authorities concluded that the engine had not reached proper operating temperature prior to takeoff, contributing to rough power delivery. Frost on the wings disrupted airflow, reducing lift. The combination caused loss of directional control during takeoff. The official report cited pilot error, specifically failure to complete pre-flight procedures and disregard for environmental conditions. Heath Ledgerwood was confirmed dead from blunt force chest trauma sustained in the crash. It was December 15, 2018, when the incident occurred at a renovated townhouse in the Beacon Hill neighborhood of Boston, Massachusetts. The three-story building had been recently remodeled with a focus on modern minimalist design. The evening temperature was 28 degrees Fahrenheit, with light snow falling intermittently. Inside, ambient lighting from recessed fixtures and candles created dim visibility in certain areas. The staircase connecting the second and third floors had been custom-built as part of the renovation. It consisted of 13 steps made from polished oak hardwood. Each step measured approximately 9 inches in depth, well below standard residential code. The designer had intentionally omitted handrails on both sides to maintain a clean visual aesthetic. The polished surface had no traction strips. Maya Brooks, 29 years old, worked in social investment, managing online campaigns for lifestyle brands. Her job required constant content creation and a curated public image. She was known among friends as image-obsessed and often careless about practical safety, in favor of visual appeal. That evening, she had been invited to a holiday gathering at the townhouse. Approximately 20 guests were present. The host had mentioned that the staircase was primarily decorative and that guests should use the main staircase near the front entrance. Despite this, several guests used the decorative staircase throughout the night. Maya had ascended and descended the staircase at least 4 times during the evening, often pausing to take photos or record videos. She was wearing black heels with smooth leather soles. Shortly after 9 p.m., she climbed to the 3rd floor to film a video. She held her phone in her right hand, angled toward herself. She began descending while still recording, her attention divided between the screen and the steps. Her right foot landed on the 2nd step from the top. The smooth sole of her heel made contact with the polished wood at a slight angle. Her foot slipped forward. She lost her balance immediately. She extended her left arm instinctively, but failed to find a handrail within reach. She fell headfirst down the staircase. Her forehead struck the edge of the 4th step with significant force. The impact fractured her skull above the right eye. Her neck compressed violently as her head absorbed the momentum. The 2nd and 3rd cervical vertebrae fractured at the base of the skull. The medical examiner later determined that the spinal cord sustained catastrophic injury at the upper cervical level. Her body continued tumbling downward. She struck several more steps before coming to rest at the base of the 2nd floor landing. She lay motionless on her side. Her phone had fallen separately and landed several feet away. 2 guests on the 2nd floor heard the impacts and found Maya unresponsive. 1 guest checked for breathing. None was detected. Another guest called emergency services at 9:14 p.m. Paramedics arrived within 7 minutes. No effective respiration was detected, and no palpable pulse could be confirmed. Her pupils were fixed and dilated. She was pronounced dead at the scene. The staircase was photographed by responding officers. The host confirmed that guests had been advised against using the staircase. Several attendees corroborated that Maya had used it multiple times throughout the evening. An autopsy identified the cause of death as a traumatic cervical spine fracture with spinal cord transection. The medical examiner noted that the injury caused immediate cessation of respiratory function. The official report concluded that the combination of narrow step depth, lack of handrails, polished surface, and inappropriate footwear created conditions that led to the fall. The report noted that the victim's attention was diverted by the phone. Thanks for watching. Want to see more? Click on your screen now